If you had one shot or one opportunity to seize everything you ever wanted in one moment, would you capture it or just let it slip? Yo. His palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy. There's vomit on his sweater already. Mom's spaghetti, he's nervous, but on the surface he looks calm and ready to drop bombs. But he keeps on forgetting what he wrote down. The whole crowd goes so loud, he opens his mouth, but the words won't come out. He's choking how? Everybody's choking now. The clock's run out, time's up, over, loud. Snap back to reality. Oh, there goes gravity. Oh, there goes gravity. Choke. He's so mad, but he won't give up. Daddies, he know he won't have it. He knows his whole back to these ropes. It don't matter, he's dope. He knows that, but he's broke. He's so stacked that he knows when he goes back to this mobile home, that's when it's back to the lab again, yo. This old rhapsody better go back to this moment and hope it don't pass him.
Listen, we can talk about the flag, but let's talk about wait.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Trending in the AM right here on DSM Media. We're live, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, as we are every Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. And I am Phil Stipe, your host at Beard and Knowledge on Twitter, joined today by Jason Voorhees at Mustang3651 on Twitter. Make sure you shoot us both a follow. Make sure you're sharing the show out on Facebook, Twitter, retweet there. On YouTube, thumbs up and hit that subscribe button because you don't want to miss a minute of the action right here on DSM Media. We got a jam-packed show today. It's Football Friday, but there's going to be minimal football talk today. We're gonna dabble in a little football talk in the middle of the show. We got to talk Sixers. We're going to talk a little bit of football, and then it's Wrestlemania weekend. You know, I'm not as big into wrestling as I used to be, but it's still one of the biggest wrestling weekends in the year. And there's a lot of correlations between wrestling and sports and wrestling and pop culture and things like that. So we're going to dive into that just a little bit today. But good morning, Jason. How you doing today?
Doing all right. What's going on?
Not much. I'm trying not to jump off a ledge. I'm trying to find a way to not, feel like the world is closing in on our Philadelphia 76ers. We are brought to you here at DSM Media by Manscaped, the leader in men's grooming products, the goat and below the waist maintenance. Make sure you check them out at manscaped.com. Use promo code DSM at checkout for 20% off and free shipping. So like I said, Sixers last night had, I think I've been talking about it for about a month and a half on this show. The final 7-game stretch of this season for the Sixers and how simple it was and how it was, the get right, the get on the momentum going into the playoffs. And of course, the Sixers then dropped the first of those 7 games to the Detroit Pistons last night, 102-94 in Detroit, to now a 21-win Pistons team. And it's really, 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 really hard to not start to panic at this point with the Sixers. Now that they've lost 3 in a row, this last one to the Detroit Pistons. So, Jason, how are you going to convince yourself not to panic at this point?
That's crazy. Yeah, that's funny. I just saw the comment.
Yeah, I just saw that a few minutes ago too, Aaron. Sorry. That's what the problem with the Mets is. They keep signing on. There's a lot of bad luck with the New York Mets.
Yeah, we can get into that on. We should bring Aaron on. Actually,
yeah. Talk about how bad luck the Mets have all the time. Yeah,
we will bring Aaron on. Actually,
we have to. We have to.
Phillies Mets rivalry. We'll talk about Absolutely. That anyway. Sixers. Where do I start? You know me, man. I've been the the object of positivity when it comes to the Sixers on most of our shows. Like I'm always the one kind of trying to.
That's a great correlation to wrestling. The power of positivity,
the patient vibes, and the pump the brakes type thing. And I kept saying like Sixers are going to be fine. It takes a little bit of time to gel. Yada yada yada. Well, here we are. I'm starting to. I don't want to say I'm starting to panic to the point where I don't think they still can contend, but. I mean, I see people on Twitter saying they'll be out in the first round. I don't necessarily believe that. I believe you can turn it on in the playoffs. I think it's like most sports. A lot of times playoffs have a different level of competition than the regular season. I'm not saying that they're dogging it at this point, but I am concerned. And my main object of, I don't want to say anger, but my main finger pointing lies at the feet of Doc Rivers. And listen, the players need to perform. That at the end of the day, the players are ultimately responsible for how this games are turning out. But to me, it seems like Doc Rivers is being, I talked about it the other day. He's stubborn. He's set in his ways. He doesn't ever adjust to, the room. Like, he sees that the team is struggling all of a sudden. You would think that there would be different combinations. And, he goes on a couple weeks ago and says, I believe you actually had on the show, like his press conference, that he's not going to use an all bench lineup and he's not going to use these 4 bench players. And then he's continuing to do it. Like, it's almost like he doesn't remember what he said. So I guess if you ask me where my pulse is, I'm definitely concerned. I think there's some issues there, and we obviously know that their bench is not strong.
We've talked about the bench a million times, and what you're saying about Doc. I mean, Marquez, Doc seems to be mailing it in. What kind of seems to me like a lot of players on this team are mailing it in. There's a lot of lackadaisical coaching, a lot of lackadaisical playing going around everywhere. I mean, James Harden, I'm not ready to burn the James Harden jerseys yet or anything like that. But if you watch him play, you just see him, his drives to the baskets, his effort, like on the offensive end in general, it's just there. Even when he goes to the basket, he takes a lot of fouls, but it's not even like he's, how do I explain this? When he's driving to the basket and taking the fouls, even that looks lazy at this point. And I know he's got that, lulls you to sleep, pitter-patter kind of style of play, but there's a difference between what we're used to seeing in James Harden, Hall of Famer, one of the best of all time, and what we're seeing these last 5-6 games. He's settling for weak jump shots, even like runners and layups. He's not going aggressively enough. The bench, obviously, everybody listens to this show know, I've been talking about the bench being an issue for a long, 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 long time. I was going to keep going, but then I figured this is only an hour show. I didn't want to waste too much more time on that. But it's an interesting thing came out. So yesterday, the first 69 points, so into the third quarter, the first 69 points of this team were scored by starters. The bench did not score a single point till Shake Milton dropped a 3-point shot in the third quarter. That's not good enough. But, and this is where I'm starting to worry a little bit about the future of this team, not just this year, is the fact that Doc Rivers actually, I don't know if you caught it, in the post-game press conference, kind of under the table called out James Harden last night. Did you catch this?
I didn't catch the post-gamer.
Well, I didn't catch it. I read about it, and then I rewatched the highlight this morning of this moment that Doc Rivers was asked about the lack of bench scoring until deep, like Mark says, deep in the third quarter. And he's like, well, there's not much the bench can do when they're not getting the opportunity to shoot the ball. So he's got this rotation where lately he's been putting James Harden with 4 bench guys, which, again, he said he wouldn't do it. No one asked him why he's still doing it. Because if you question him, he just, throws you under the bus. Like, Austin Krell got thrown under the bus, a while ago, earlier this season. He puts these guys out there, and obviously Harden and 4 bench guys doesn't work. Keeps doing it. But then when he was asked about why the bench wasn't scoring, he basically, in a nonchalant, roundabout way, said, well, James Harden's not giving them the opportunity to score. And that's going to be the start. And I really want to pay attention to these next couple of days, because Doc Rivers, he's a Hall of Fame coach. Whether we like him or not, whether we think he's as great as the NBA rankings rank him or not, he's still a really good coach in his career. He's got a pedigree. He's got a title. He's well respected in league circles. But James Harden is the type of guy that if you piss him off, he's going to stir trouble too. Doc Rivers just threw James Harden under the bus. How is this going to now snowball and ripple effect happen? Is James Harden going to be like, you know what, this is still my best chance of winning the title? Time to buck up and, in the words of what's his name from Zombieland, it's time to nut up or shut up here, or is he going to play diva James Harden and be pissed off that Doc Rivers called him out publicly? And this is the start of a little snowball effect problem that could happen. Will it happen? I don't know. But it's another sub-story of we already got enough problems going down the stretch here, whether this team could gel and figure it out. Now we got to worry about Doc Rivers calling out James Harden in front of everybody.
Well, let's be real here, okay? I do the math in these type of situations, and I personally know, not that I have inside information, it's pretty much a given that James Harden and Daryl Morey are like this. Okay?
Absolutely.
So here's where I'm at. Yeah, but Doc Rivers can throw Harden under the bus all he wants, because I'm going to tell you right now, if it comes to Harden or Doc Rivers, Harden has a better chance of being on his team if this team continues down the track that it is, because Doc Rivers is doing a horrible job of managing the players right now. He is.
Absolutely.
It's a bottom line is, like, and one of our own, I saw Scotty ask the question, would this team be better off right now with Sam Cassell? I actually believe that. I think Daryl Morey is just, I don't, listen, he's a Hall of Famer, and a lot of times that word is used loosely because, let's face it, Hall of Fame, a lot of people are in the Hall of Fame that really don't belong in the Hall of Fame.
That's like a 3-week episode.
Exactly. But my point is that Doc Rivers should be getting more out of this team. Like, you have James Harden and Embiid. We talked about it when we made the trade, how this was going to make us one of the best teams in the league. And listen, for a couple games there, we looked like unstoppable. But I did say that sometimes teams need to battle adversity to get over the hump and kind of get themselves right before the playoffs. And I'm not saying that I'm glad that this stuff's going on, but I will say that a lot of times these kind of issues can build character. Like, if you're just going into the playoffs with the mindset that everything is okay and there's nothing wrong and there's no issues, a lot of times those are the teams that get bounced in the first round. I'm not saying that there's not a concern. See, once again, I hate when we bring up a point and everyone like wants to troll you and say, well, right. Listen, what I am saying is that the Sixers have the talent to win a championship. They do. If everything goes right and if they play the way they're capable of playing, I think a lot of the Sixers' issues right now, you said it, they're lackadaisical. Like, where's that energy that there was 3 weeks ago? Like, there's not the same energy. And that's a problem. Like, I don't think it's necessarily – you can't really say it's a talent thing because they're in some of these games. They should be winning. They're winning a lot of the games.
They should have won last night's game by 12, 15,
exactly.
21.
That's what's frustrating the most about it is that they're in these games and they're just basically, like, giving them away. And that, to me, shows that they're lacking a killer instinct. And I know that they have it, but –
to me, it shows that they lack something else. And this Philadelphia 76ers organization has lacked it now since the process has begun. 2 straight coaches now. They lack accountability. I mean, let's be honest. I used to talk about it. This was before I did shows, and I brought it up, before. There was a game like 3 years ago where Ben Simmons had 9 turnovers in the first half of a game. It was just a random regular season game. And I had like 4 followers. I would tweet once a year or whatever, and I tweet out Ben Simmons should be benched. Show that you're going to hold him accountable. He wasn't. He went on to turn the ball over another 600 times the second half of the game. And I'm not being sarcastic with the 9 turnovers part. He literally had 9 turnovers in the first half of the game. And he wasn't benched, and we lost that game. It was a game we were supposed to win. No accountability on that team. No accountability in the Brett Brown regime. We get rid of Brett Brown. We bring in the pedigree of Doc Rivers. You expect some accountability. But all Doc Rivers has done since he's been here is baby Ben Simmons last year and now not hold this team accountable. And he's not holding himself accountable either. He says he's going to do X, Y, Z. He doesn't do X, Y, Z. And that's the issue here. And, yes, you have young Tyrese Maxey. But for the most part, you see this team. Joel Embiid's a veteran. He's a superstar. He's the MVP of this league. You have James Harden's been in this league for double-digit seasons. George Niang is a veteran in this league. Danny Green has won 3 titles with 3 different teams. Okay, Tobias Harris has been in this league for a long time. Let's go down this list. DeAndre Jordan has been on championship caliber teams before. There's a lot of veterans on this team. This is not a young upstart team like Detroit last night. It's a veteran-laden team. If their coach isn't accountable or holding himself accountable, players on most sporting teams take on the personality of their coaches. And if their coach is a stubborn pain in the ass that doesn't hold anybody accountable, why would they hold themselves accountable? There's a lot of iso ball, a lot of one-on-one ball, a lot of guys just no set offense being run, just going, getting the ball, doing what they're doing. And you see it in the big stretch this year where we were starting to take off this year and, see this team, we're talking MVP, we're talking title, we're talking number 1 seed. That stretch of the year, Joel Embiid's turnovers were down. Tyrese Maxey was on fire. Everybody was playing to their peak. All of a sudden last night, Joel Embiid had 7 turnovers. And if you watch the end of that fourth quarter, after, again, Doc Rivers poorly managing his minutes and had to have him out for the first 5 minutes, 6 minutes of the fourth quarter, that's a mistake, obviously. You don't need him for all 12 minutes of the third quarter. You need him for as many minutes in the fourth quarter as possible. That's another whole subject. But Joel Embiid had 2 or 3 turnovers in the last 3 minutes of the game. And if you look at any of those turnovers, they were sloppy turnovers. A, either because he was uninterested in the game, or B, because he was exhausted, or C, because he was just playing lackadaisical. He was like bringing the ball up, and it was just I could have swatted the ball out of his hands last night because he wasn't holding the ball with any energy or firmness. So you take on the personality of your coach. If your coach is a stubborn, lackadaisical, unaccountable person, the players are going to play like that as well. And that, to me, is the problem. And again, I did not want Doc Rivers. I wanted Ty Lue. Now, Ty Lue's not doing anything special either, so maybe both were the wrong choice. But Doc Rivers, he had 1 good season. He won 1 title with his big 3. You hope that would work here. It's not working here. But, and just on a side note, can I go off? Today is April 1st. When you see Adrian Wojciechowski tweet out Doc Rivers has been fired, it is an April Fool's joke, guys. Just so you know. When you see Tom Brady get traded to the Eagles, it's a joke, guys. There's already somebody else tweeted out that Jason Peters got signed to a 3-year, $18 million deal to play right guard for the Eagles. It's April 1st, guys. Let's ignore social media as much as possible today because there's going to be a lot of fake news out there just to make you all overreact because it's April Fool's, guys. But Doc Rivers is the problem right now. I mean, James Harden's the problem as well. Joel Embiid's the problem as well. But if you can't hold your coach accountable, then you can't hold the players accountable. So that's the way it works.
Domino effect.
Domino effect. Exactly.
I mean, you're spot on with that analysis. I couldn't agree more. Like, I think I've been saying it that the coach is the main issue. And I think the problem is that you only have a short time now to get this kind of, going in the right direction. And I'm not really sure what type of strategy that they should take, because if I'm the Sixers at this point and, you are in this lull and you're struggling, do you realistically look at this and say, well, let's just sit some guys like honestly, and not even worry about where your seeding is, but get healthy?
Well, they're going to sit guys. Let's be honest. There's 6 games left. You've got 2 back-to-backs. You got this Saturday and Sunday and next Saturday, Sunday to close the season. So in the next 9 days, or it's starting on Saturday, in the next 8 days, they've got 6 games, 4 of them back-to-backs. So they're going to sit guys. But the problem is, does sitting guys even help at this point? Yes, you're going to get James Harden some rest on that hamstring and groin. Yeah, you're gonna rest Joel Embiid and rest him and get him a little bit of pressure for the playoff. But that's not going to solve the poor play together. That's not going to solve the lackadaisical, effort. It's not going to solve, Doc Rivers' rotational issues. It's just going to get you healthy and rested for the playoffs.
I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is that to me right now, health is the most important, because if Harden isn't healthy, I mean, I keep seeing all these people saying he's hurt. Like, if he's not healthy, then why is he on the court? Because honest to God, like, that to me means that he's a liability. Because if he's not playing at full strength, it's the same thing. Like, if Joel Embiid's not 100%, then why would we play him? Like, to me, I think health is still your number one important thing. I get that you're saying that it's not going to solve these other issues. Those other issues aren't going to get solved in 7 games anyway, though. That's where I'm at. Like, I guess my question is that, knowing that you're not going to solve that, and knowing you can't fix your bench, your team is what it is. I'm saying, do you sit them for 6 games like Embiid and Harden? Like, realistically, like, I know they're not going to do that, but
yeah, that's a bit extreme. But you could definitely sit them for one half of each back-to-back, and maybe one game, maybe only play them 3 of the last. You could hypothetically, you're not going to sit them for 6. And I get what you're saying.
Do you try something different? Do you throw Tobias Harris and Maxey out there like you've been saying? Like, do you try something? Try it. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? It doesn't succeed. You're not doing anything right anyway.
That's the problem with Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers, his head believes the hype that he's one of the 10 greatest coaches in the NBA history.
It's mind-boggling.
So he says this is what's going to work, and he's going to stick to it till it doesn't work, or till it loses him his job. Look, this team is what it is. At this point, with 6 games left, what we saw last night, but also what we've seen in some other games where they've won and played well, that is what this team is. When we get to the playoffs, based off of matchups, injuries, and energy level, this team could easily be Sixers and 5. But on the flip side of the equation, it could easily be Sixers losing 5. This team is an inconsistent team. It's a poorly constructed team. And it goes back to the other tweet that I put out last night. And all of a sudden, after 2 years of tweeting this out, finally people are starting to see it. Daryl Morey is the absolute number one issue with this team. Daryl Morey is a superstar front office executive. Why? Why do people put him up there at the top? Because all he's done is trade for James Harden 600 times in his career. That's all he's ever done. He's so dead set, focused, blinders on. That's all I want is my team around James Harden. How many titles has James Harden, or has Daryl Morey won, or James Harden? How many titles, how many championship rounds has Daryl Morey even gotten his teams to? None. Daryl Morey has this reputation of being this great front office executive. He did win Executive of the Year one time with the Rockets, but they didn't even make the Western Conference Finals that year. Daryl Morey is a bigger bogus rating as an executive than Doc Rivers is as a head coach. Yes, I would do the Ben Simmons for James Harden trade, the exact same trade, 100,000 times again. But the fact that Daryl Morey was so focused on just James Harden since last season, all off season and all this season, that's all he was focused on. And tweeting out like, subtle tweets about what's going on, that it's almost happening, this and that. He was so focused on it. He forgot about one key thing. You have 15 men on your NBA roster. He only cared about bringing in one guy. And that's it. He didn't care whether it matched up well with the rest of this team. He didn't care what it did to the rhythm of this team. And again, like I said, the Sixers team is better with James Harden than it is with Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, and Andre Drummond. It is. There's no doubt about it in my mind. When you got to still run out Danny Green, Furkan Korkmaz, Shake Milton, DeAndre Jordan, Paul Millsap, all these guys, then you've got a problem. The Sixers, hypothetically speaking, are still trying to get that number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. They can't hypothetically rest any of these guys down the stretch because they need to, fix, do that. But this team is bad. If you really break it down, they could be really good and they could go on a run because they've got top heavy James Harden and Joel Embiid. All you need is James Harden just to, all of a sudden start knocking down his shots. He was 4 of 15 last night. Shot awful again last night. 4 of 15, 2 of 9 from 3. If he just gets hot from shooting again, all of a sudden this team's winning. but they're so top heavy. He didn't build a proper team. And what has Daryl Morey ever done to deserve the hype that he gets? Nothing. 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 And I've been preaching this for years, and no one believes me. I said it the day they signed Daryl Morey, and I got called out by Rob Manoff and a bunch of other guys. Not to drop you, Rob. I'm not calling you out. Actually, I haven't even seen you on Twitter. I hope you're good, man. I got called out by all of you back when we were all at Yellow Jacket, which doesn't even exist anymore. I said Daryl Morey, no good, no bueno. And y'all called me out for it. I've been saying it since. That's the crux of this problem. The number one crux of the problem, Jason. Sorry, I had to get that off, but I'm just glad that people are starting to see my side of it right now.
Well, I mean, I don't disagree with you. Like,
now everybody's seeing it my way.
Yeah, but playing the devil's advocate, Daryl Morey has definitely improved the Sixers since he's been the GM. Like, you can't say that he hasn't.
How? Did we win a title with him yet?
No, but we got rid of Ben Simmons.
Okay, all right, yeah, okay. Bye, all right. Yeah.
And we got James Harden, and I know you're saying that he's not the only one, but he's still, like I said, I think, I don't know, man. I think James Harden, the fact of the matter is I watched that press conference when he came here, and he realistically, and listen, people can BS and bullshit when they're on camera, but I realistically felt that he was genuine in the fact that he wanted to be here and play with Embiid. And I believed everything he said, that he believes that this, he wants to be the number 2, and he wants, to help this team in whatever way he can win. And I believe that with my heart of hearts. I don't listen, a lot of people are bashing James Harden, and I get it because they want James Harden of 5 years ago. But listen, James Harden is a little different, but even James Harden now is still better than 80% of players in the league. Like, the bottom line is James Harden and Embiid, even though Harden shot terrible last night, but on a mostly consistent basis, Harden and Embiid are not the problem with this team. It's the bench. The bench and the lack of bench is the problem. And the coaching decisions and how he makes his lineups and within those benches. That's what I'm looking at as being the main problem.
Is the bench? I mean, the bench is a problem. But like Doc Rivers said after the game yesterday, it was his fault for building this rotation. But putting 4 bench guys and James Harden out there, but James Harden never actually giving the bench the chance to shoot.
Okay, then switch it up.
Is that the bench's fault?
Then switch it up, Phil. If Harden's not playing well,
absolutely
in that situation, then be a coach. Change it.
It should be Tyrese Maxey in the bench because Tyrese Maxey knows how to be aggressive at that point.
I mean, if I have a guy that's in a certain department and he's struggling, he's not doing well, but I know he has a strength in this area, I switch it up. That's what a good manager does. That's what a coach's job is to do. And that's what Doc Rivers is not doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get it. We could focus on the stars and say, well, at the end of the day, it's Embiid and Harden. And realistically, that's what it's going to be anyway. If the Sixers have any shot at winning a title, it's going to be on the shoulders of Embiid and Harden. Because if they're not performing at the level that they have to, they're not going to win. So at the end of the day,
we talk about all this, and typically most franchises when they get to the playoffs, their rotation shrinks. They go from playing 9 or 10 guys a game down to 7, some teams 6, maybe 8. They stretch it to 8, whatever. But we thought this was going to be the case last year, and Doc Rivers was still running 9, 10-man rotations in the playoffs. So hypothetically speaking, come playoff time, Tobias should be playing 40 minutes a game. Maxey should be playing 40 minutes a game. Embiid, Harden should be playing 39, 40, 41 minutes a game. And you should have maybe George Niang playing a few minutes off the bench, DeAndre Jordan or whoever the backup center is, spelling Joel for 3 minutes here, 3 minutes there, whatever it may be. But guys like, Furkan and Shake Milton and, those guys shouldn't be seeing the court in the playoffs. But we've already seen Doc Rivers' track record, and he doesn't believe in that. So we're going to be relying on these same poor rotations. Look, the next 6 games, isn't going to solve Doc. Isn't going to all of a sudden Doc Rivers has been coaching for 20 plus years. The next 6 games, he's not going to change, and that's a problem right there.
I'll tell you what I'd like to see change. I'd like to see, and I have saw bits and pieces and little dribbles of it, dribs and drabs. Tobias Harris, like, kind of turn it on to another level. Like,
Yeah.
I've seen him improve. Like, he's definitely, you're not seeing all the people bashing Tobias like every day, like on a daily basis. He's definitely playing better, but I'd like to see him even ramp it up even more. Like, I know last night he shot 6 and 9, but that's not a lot of opportunities. Now, is that because he's not, obviously
he was in foul trouble a lot last night as well. So he sat a lot. Like, he probably plays on average, right up there with, Tyrese Maxey, some of the higher amount of minutes. He only played 36 minutes last night. He was in foul trouble. So he sat a little bit more in the third and fourth quarter than he normally typically does. So that's part of his shots and his minutes. But yeah, I mean, I would love to see a game when Harden and Embiid sit and Tobias Harris has to take 20 shots. He gets his shots. He's definitely turned a corner. I'm actually concerned about Tyrese Maxey more than anybody. We had to know him, the next superstar, the next this and that. He's been I actually think out of anything, he's kind of hitting the wall. Sometimes we talk about the rookie wall.
And you're not hearing it.
You're not hearing. He couldn't hit the rookie wall last year because he didn't really play much last year. He was behind Ben Simmons. He wasn't getting the minutes and opportunities till playoff time last year. I think he's kind of a little tired. His shots aren't falling. His energy level isn't there. The smile's there sometimes. It's not there all the time. When he's not smiling, that concerns me.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, and not a lot of people are talking about it. Like, I know, listen, he's young.
Yeah.
But
he's 21 years old.
But you got to remember, like, everyone was like you said, anointing him the next one. But it's like, sometimes you got to look at it like, okay, well, and remember, he is still only 21. Like, the guy is going to be, we know what he is. He's superstar in front of us. It's just, I think that you're right. He has to get over that fear of playing with the stars and how you always say, he always defers to the stars when he's with them. Yeah. Like, he needs to have a little bit more confidence in his own ability, because at the end of the day, I could see Tyrese Maxey down the line being the second best player on the team, obviously, besides Joel. I mean, there's no reason why.
There might come a time in 4 years where
he might be that max guy, yeah.
He might be the best guy on the team. Let's be honest, in 4 years, Joel Embiid will be 31, 32 years old. So, it's an interesting thought process there. So, are we jumping off the cliff? Are we ready to – can we realistically still say 6-5 with this team?
I mean, like I said, I'm not jumping off the cliff, but I'm concerned. So, I think you nailed it. They're inconsistent. They could win in 4 in a series, and they could get swept. I mean, that's how inconsistent they are, and that is exactly to your talking point of they've taken on the mentality and the character of the coach. That's the team. That's Doc Moore. I mean, that's Doc Rivers. Doc Morey. We can basically lump them together. So yeah, there we go.
They're both on my shit at this point.
They're both on your shit list.
They are. They're getting close to the dead. I have a list on my golf show. It's called the DTM list. It's the dead to me list. Yeah, they might be borderline getting onto the DTM list for me. So the Sixers don't play again until Saturday night. They're home against Charlotte, and they play Sunday in Cleveland. I mean, obviously, we'll talk about that stuff on Monday. Can they right the ship? I mean, Charlotte and Cleveland are actual playoff teams. Charlotte's kind of in that playing. I think actually Charlotte and Cleveland. Yeah, Cleveland's down the 7th seed. Charlotte's in the 9th seed. They're both in that play-in range kind of games. So they're all teams playing for, the playoff seeding actually matters just as much in those play-in games as it does in the top half, because if you're the 7th or 8th seed, you only have to win 1 play-in game. If you're the 9th or 10th seed, you got to win 2 play-in games to get to the playoffs. These are 2 teams that are borderline teams that, they're not going to win a round in the playoffs, but they're fighting for that chance and that respect. can they win both games? When we come on this air, 8:30 Monday morning, Overreaction Monday, will we be talking about a 2-0 weekend, a 1-1 weekend, or an 0-2 weekend?
I mean, my
Because
heart.
we better be talking about at minimum a 1-1. If it's 0-2 when we come on Monday, Overreaction Monday will be lit with jumping off the cliff. I'm standing on the edge of the cliff, looking over. I see the rocks. Like, can I avoid those rocks when I jump in?
You already have the title for Monday's show.
What?
Off a cliff.
Yeah, off the cliff, Overreaction Monday. I'm looking. If they're 0-2, we're going off the cliff on Monday morning.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that they could get the ship righted and win too. I'd like to think that they could just say, you know what, guys, this is not fucking. Excuse my language. I'd say
wow.
Yeah, this is not acceptable.
Not sports and metal, damn it.
This is not acceptable. We are not playing to our capabilities. We are not firing on all cylinders like we should be. Mm-hmm. Get your shit at it. Get your shit in gear. Get your head out of your asses and start playing the way that you can play. Because if this team plays at its peak, we've seen what they can do. They dominate. Mm-hmm. Like, and they're not doing that. They're not putting teams away. Like when they have a 20-point lead, it's like, they go on autopilot. Mm-hmm. It's not acceptable. And somebody need in that locker room, because it's not obviously Doc Rivers ain't doing it, because you're right. He doesn't hold anybody accountable. He can't hold himself accountable. Somebody in that locker room needs to say, yo, guys, this is not right. We need to wake up. Maybe Joel Embiid. I don't know, but somebody's got to do it, because it's definitely not trending. No pun intended.
You're trying to put puns into the show right there. Look at you.
So,
all right, that's enough. That's enough of the Sixers crap for tonight.
Wow,
for today.
It's the Sixers.
Whew. I know. I wanted to spend like 60 minutes just on wrestling, but we only got 20 minutes left. Yo, it's WrestleMania weekend. And first off, before we talk about WrestleMania, some people would be surprised. I'm an old school wrestling fan. I grew up watching wrestling. I've always loved it. I still watch it from time to time if there's no Sixers game on, if there's no Phillies game. During baseball season, I never watch wrestling because I'm always watching baseball instead. I still have it on sometimes. I still kind of know what's going on. But even as recently as the last 4 or 5 years, I was watching wrestling every single night. It was a big part of my life, always has been. It's a fun outlet. It's our soap operas, it's what it is. Jason, I know you haven't been a wrestling fan since you were a kid. I think you said, but WrestleMania has always been a dream of mine to go to see live in person. It's just not the same anymore, and I look at it, first off, the thing that ruined wrestling as a whole was the internet, because you can go and find every spoiler online. You can go find every little piece of news online. The imagination isn't there with wrestling anymore, and that's a shame. But also now with WrestleMania being the big weekend that it is, it's now a 2-day event. There's literally it used to be a 4-hour card. I still remember my first WrestleMania that I bought pay-per-view wise. It was WrestleMania 15 in Philly. I was in college. A bunch of guys, we got around the dorm room. We bought the pay-per-view, and it was the first one we actually paid for and didn't illegally stream or something like that. And it was a 4-hour event of the greatest stories of the entire year paying off. It was the culmination of every storyline paying off. And now, then it got to a few years ago, it got to a 7-hour Sunday event. How you can sit there for 7 hours and watch a 7-hour wrestling event, it's beyond me. Now it's even worse. It's the last couple of years since COVID started. It's 2 nights. It's 4 or 5 hours, 2 nights in a row. The luster of it has been worn off, in my opinion. And there's some really interesting matches this year and stuff like that. But first, I want to talk about, Jason, wrestlers now and from the past. I don't know if you realize how many of them were professional football players, or at least almost became professional football players. The number one name on the list, obviously, is The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. I know he played for the University of Miami, right? Do you know that if he did not get injured in college, we might not have seen a Hall of Famer take his step forward. Do you know who replaced The Rock on the defensive line when he got injured his junior year?
I don't.
Warren Sapp. Warren Sapp was the backup to The Rock. Maybe it was The Rock's senior year, Warren Sapp's junior year. I might have the exact timeline messed up. But Warren Sapp was the backup. And Dwayne The Rock Johnson got hurt. Warren Sapp came in. The rest is history. Became a Hall of Fame level, defensive lineman. Warren, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, tried to play in Canada, couldn't even hack it there. The injury was too much. Goes on to be the greatest selling wrestler of all time, one of the biggest movie stars of all time. The whole history is different there. But people forget or don't realize that The Rock was quite the talented defensive lineman at the University of Miami. Let's see here. My page froze up there. I'm not sure. I can't see all the different wrestlers' names now that were on my list. Obviously, the guy that's main eventing WrestleMania right now, Roman Reigns, Joe Inoue, from the legendary Inoue family. He played at Georgia Tech. He was a starter, all pro, 2 years at Georgia Tech. So people don't realize that about him, about how great of a wrestler he is. Goldberg, obviously, played NFL football. He had about 4 or 5 games with the Falcons. Brock Lesnar, he got cut. He tried to play football. He did not make it. There are a lot of wrestlers that got their start in football, and whether it was injuries or just not quite hacking it, went to the squared circle instead. It's really surprising how many people did that.
Yeah, I mean, well, it makes sense. I mean, these guys are, super talented athletes, and they're big. I mean, let's face it, wrestlers are we tend to think and we look at wrestlers as being larger than life, like
right.
A lot of football players. I mean, it's the same kind of breed. I know football, obviously, they're not playing in cage matches, but
right.
It's the same mentality and same kind of instinct in your mind, like that you want to punish somebody. That's why, like, you ever read any of Brian Dawkins' quotes, or looking back at his career. I mean, when he nicest guy in the world off of the football field, but when he's on the football field, he becomes somebody else, and that's wrestling. Like that's basically why they kind of go hand in hand as far as entertainment. Like, I love, and listen, I know you said, I haven't really watched wrestling since my childhood, and you're right. Like when I was young, obviously WWF was the thing, and Aaron and I used to watch WWF almost on a daily night at his grandpa's, and his, God rest his soul, like his grandpa was like the biggest wrestling fan ever. Like I learned all of my wrestling knowledge from Aaron's grandfather, and those moments will live with me forever. And like I said, my favorite, obviously, all-time wrestler is Randy Macho Man Savage. But I obviously idolized Hulk Hogan growing up. And, I know you had asked me offline, like, what my favorite WrestleMania memory was. And I have a couple of them, and they both actually involve Hulk Hogan.
Okay.
So my first actual favorite WrestleMania memory was when I believe it was WrestleMania 8. Hogan was actually being beat badly by Sid Justice. And
Sid.
All of a sudden, you heard the guitar riffs going, and you know where I'm going with this. The Warrior was back. One of my other favorites. That's what I mean. Like I always go back to the WWF guys, but the Ultimate Warrior, to me, like with the face painting, that was like an awesome memory. And obviously we know how that turned out. But
yeah, I mean that's actually one of my saddest WrestleMania memories is the Ultimate Warrior, because obviously he had a falling out with Vince McMahon. A few years back, he was brought back to go into the Hall of Fame, the WWE Hall of Fame, and the night after WrestleMania, when he got his Hall of Fame induction, the night after he came on Monday Night Raw, and he gave a big speech to the crowd. And if you've never heard that speech that he gave, he came out in a suit. He had face paint on though, and he gave a speech. And I don't want to misquote it, but just go listen to it. I mean, he literally died that night. And the speech he gave about, breathing your last breath and and living life to the fullest and all. Like literally, if you watch that speech and don't know he dies, and then you read that speech and then know that he died later that night, it literally brings tears to your eyes. And so I was never an Ultimate Warrior fan, but there's so many beefs in wrestling, and behind the scene beefs, and the fact that they got to mend their fences, him and Mr. McMahon, and then he got that final moment to give that speech to the crowd, and then he passed away. It literally is one of the biggest tearjerker things in my mind in not just WrestleMania season
in life
history, but in wrestling life or in life in general. We always talk about the speeches that the stars give at the ESPYs. They always have the Stuart Scotts, the different guys that give these speeches at the ESPYs, and we know that they're very sick. These individuals. We didn't know that anything was wrong with with the Ultimate Warrior there, and that there, I mean, it really, it really gets you. It really does. It really does.
Yeah,
we're just getting started on wrestling conversation here, Freddie Defo. Just getting started.
Yes, dude, you're right. I mean, that was, I didn't even realize that when I was bringing it up as one of my memories, but you're right. Like, I mean, obviously, like I said, he was also one of my favorites. But my other memory that I have, and this will kind of go hand in hand with what you were talking about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. So my other memory that I really enjoy is in 2002 when he was now called Hollywood Hulk, obviously not Hulkamania, but he fought The Rock, and it was billed icon versus icon. It was basically like the passing of the torch, and that,
even though The Rock was kind of already towards the end of his wrestling career.
Well, yeah, but that to me, realistically, like,
it was a legigendary match.
They're two of my favorites. I love The Rock. Like, now obviously I've learned to and grown to love The Rock more as a movie star. I mean, he's actually a very good movie star, but obviously what he did in wrestling was, pretty much unmatched.
I still remember when they had their face off before the event, like leading up to the event, and the crowd just, was so, it was immense. I still remember I was at the SmackDown. So for those that don't know their wrestling history, Hulk Hogan, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, the NWO, they were part of WCW. And when WCW got bought out, they did not transfer over because they were actually under contract to Time Warner, not WCW. So they literally sat at home for like 2 years collecting paychecks, not wrestling. And then when their contracts were up and, Vinnie Mac brought them over to WWE, he brought them over as a trio as the NWO. And their first appearance in WWE as the NWO was at a SmackDown. It was in Philadelphia. I was at that SmackDown. Back then, SmackDown was pre-taped. It wasn't a live show. So they would, when you go to a pre-taped show, sometimes they have to retape segments. So they run it live and straight through. But sometimes when I was at a SmackDown once when Kane was fighting X-Pac and the fire extinguisher didn't go off. So they had to stop, and like Kane was holding his hands on his hips while somebody was handing X-Pac a new fire extinguisher to set off. And they just edited that out on the show. That was the kind of things when you see. So the NWO was supposed to be brought in as a major heel. This is the first time that these three guys were in a WWE ring in literally 6-7 years, and in a ring period in several years. So when they came out, they were supposed to come out as, bad guys, get booed out of the arena. The cheers when these three guys came out was so deafening that they actually had to stop their entrance, like bow and thank the crowd, and then go backstage, send someone else out to hype the crowd up to make them boo, and then re-bring these guys out so that they could get booed live on stage, because that's what they wanted for the crowd reaction for the TV show. So that to me was that was ultimate. But to see bad guy Hulk Hogan go up against The Rock at WrestleMania, it was legend from the past to the legend's future. Fantastic. I still go, though, The Rock is actually part of my favorite parts of WrestleMania, because The Rock versus Stone Cold Steve Austin rivalry through the whole entire Attitude Era, it was a rivalry like none other. And they fought multiple times at WrestleMania. It was WrestleMania 17. It was Stone Cold Steve Austin's last match, and it was the first time that The Rock ever beat Stone Cold at WrestleMania. And if you go back and you watch the main event, you don't even have to watch the match itself. If you watch the match itself, when The Rock pins Stone Cold Steve Austin, only 3 people knew it was Stone Cold's last match. The Rock, Vince McMahon, and Stone Cold. Nobody else knew it was. You can actually see The Rock lean over to Stone Cold and whisper in his ear, "Thank you." Because The Rock knew that he wouldn't have been The Rock without Stone Cold, and Stone Cold wouldn't have been The Rock without Stone Cold without The Rock. Like they basically helped each other be who they were. So if you're really looking closely, you could see The Rock lean over, say thank you, roll away, and The Rock won. Normally the winner gets to stay in the ring, and the loser rolls out and just saunters off, to let the winner soak up the cheers. The Rock rolls out of the ring and lets Stone Cold soak up that being his last moment and his last match.
Awesome. I agree, man. That is probably one of the most unrivaled rivalries in any sport, in sports. Like The Rock and Stone Cold, like, kind of reminds me of, like, I don't know, Ali Frazier. Like, it's just those kind of, matchups where it's just, and it was always fun to watch because both of the characters, it's not just the wrestlers, like the characters that they built, like, Stone Cold with the beers and, The Rock, like, just with his,
and that's, I think this is my problem with wrestling nowadays is that, I mean, I'm looking at this year's WrestleMania card. It's 2 nights, like I said. On the first night, Saturday night, you've got some decent matches. You got Becky Lynch. She's one of the women's champions against Bianca Belair. If you're not watching, you might not even know who they are. But it's been built up for a little bit. Seth Rollins doesn't even know who his opponent's going to be. There's rumors that Cody Rhodes, Dusty Rhodes' son's coming back. You got Rey Mysterio and his son against The Miz and Logan Paul. Do we really care about Logan Paul? It's all about getting more social media clicks, on it. You've got, Stone Cold coming back to be on a talk show. You got Charlotte Flair against Ronda Rousey. I think the Ronda Rousey star has dwindled enough that people don't care about Ronda Rousey anymore. Night 2, you got Sami Zayn, who is one of the most underrated, great wrestlers of all time. Like in the last 10, 15, 20 years, used to be known as El Generico on the independent circuit. He's wrestling Johnny Knoxville. Talk about product placement and a match. Do we really care about that? We got Pat McAfee. You know who Pat McAfee is, right? The guy with this podcast. I mean, he's an announcer for the wrestling too, and he has wrestled a match or two. He has got one of the main event slots on night 2 of WrestleMania. This is what it's come down to. A lot of Bobby Lashley, Bobby Lashley is a former Army Ranger going up against a guy. He literally set his matchup on Monday against it literally. You had to get him on the card. They didn't have anything. So this past Monday, they set him up for a spot. Like, there's no thought process put in here. Now, yes, Brock Lesnar, main event against Roman Reigns. It's an exciting match. It's years in the making. It's a great culmination of a storyline. The current version of Brock Lesnar is very entertaining. The current version of Roman Reigns, extremely entertaining. But really, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You got 16 matches over 2 days. And 4 of them have like that storyline payoff that we've been talking about here with The Rock and Stone Cold. The Rock, the build-up, there is no build-up to any of these. So it's boring. Why would I commit 8 hours this weekend to watching WrestleMania or pay for WrestleMania for this? And it breaks my heart.
And that's exactly why I don't watch anymore. Like, I mean, I know I mentioned, obviously, my early history with, like, Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant,
right?
Bret the Hitman Hart, like, guys that are, like, just legends, right? And then, obviously, you had the next era, which was, like, Stone Cold, The Rock. You had The Undertaker. I mean, you can't mention wrestling without The Undertaker.
Absolutely.
I mean,
that's actually my favorite WrestleMania match, The Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels in his last match. Shawn Michaels' last match when he got retired by The Undertaker. But they had this whole storyline building up. Evil versus, the heavens, The Undertaker in black, Shawn Michaels all dressed in white, coming out with the white lights like he was, heavenly and stuff like that. I mean, it's probably, and to think that they are both towards the end of their career and they put on one of the greatest wrestling matches of all time. at that point. You can't mention WrestleMania without Mr. WrestleMania Shawn Michaels and without The Undertaker as well.
Yeah, and so that's my point. Like, you had all that, and now, like you said, like, I don't have anything to get excited for. I like Brock Lesnar, but I really don't know much about it. It's not like I've watched a lot of his matches. Mm-hmm. That's about it. Like, I'm not into wrestling now because, like you said, it's not – there's no thought process, and it's just not larger than life anymore. That's what attracted me to wrestling.
Bring something up here. It's, they're too – I don't know if they're too scared to create big stars because they'll leave like The Rock and John Cena. What I think it is they're afraid to take the time to build new stars. You need to build this. Like, WWE needs to take a step back in ratings and dollars being made to be able to create the next Rock or John Cena because, and you see that because they keep bringing back Brock Lesnar. They keep bringing back Logan Paul type people, celebrities to kind of, they use them to sell the attention versus just, hey, we might take a little hit for the next 2 years. Let's build up one of these young guys that we've got. And then maybe in 2-3 years, they'll be the guys selling out arenas. But you got to take the time doing it. Also, like I said, I think the internet kind of ruins it. Like tomorrow night, Cody Rhodes is rumored to return after all these years to WWE, Dusty Rhodes' son, to face Seth Rollins. But there's literally internet rumors, people taking pictures of him outside of the hotel where the wrestlers are staying. So, we know he's there. Now, they might throw a curveball and change it up or something. But the internet rumors ruin everything. The internet, wrestling is pretty much, there's a million podcasts that are dedicated to sports in each city, and there's all different, online websites that write and get credentials to all these sports teams. It's the same thing with wrestling. There's major websites, credentials, they go backstage, there's interviews, and the internet kind of sort of ruined wrestling, the intrigue of it, so I will shout out one more thing. One of my favorite WrestleMania moments was my man Daniel Bryan winning the main event of WrestleMania. I did originally grow my beard because the Yeselmania and that whole thing with Daniel Bryan overcoming the odds to win, it kind of, it was the last big payoff for me. And I enjoyed the payoff of that WrestleMania run. They did things that were creative that time and never been done before instead of rehashing what they always do. And they gave the fans what they wanted, the ultimate payoff there, Daniel Bryan. Now, I keep my beard for other reasons now, but, I did first grow my beard out. Yes, a 37-year-old man grew his beard out just to be like Daniel Bryan, Bryan Danielson. So,
Dude, there's so many memories, probably too many to mention on the show. But, how about the slam heard around the world? Like, when Hogan slammed Andre the Giant, like, that's like...
I hate that moment. Everybody talks about that, and I hate it.
I hate it.
I never bought into the Hogan versus Andre the Giant feud. Andre the Giant. If you've never watched it, there was an HBO documentary done on his life. It was kind of like an ESPN 30 for 30 type thing. Man, that guy, man. It's a sad. There's a lot of great documentaries on a lot of great wrestlers out there. The one Ric Flair that ESPN did on Ric Flair right after his time in a coma, a massive, yeah, the CM Punk returning after 7 years back in August, huge moment, absolutely. I just never liked the Andre the Giant, versus Hogan rivalry. I don't know. They hype it up as the biggest moment in Hogan's career. If you want to see something special about Hulk Hogan,
I don't think it's the biggest moment. I just think
a lot of people hype it up as, and I just it's okay to me.
I think it was amazing
back in that time frame. I don't know if it was WrestleMania season or not. But Hulk Hogan, I love watching old Johnny Carson episodes. It's always on like at 10 or 11 o'clock at night on Cozy TV or Me TV, one of those channels in like the 400s or something like that. And there's Hulk Hogan, goes on Johnny Carson. This is in like the 70s or 80s or whatever it is. Hulkamania is just starting out. It's just becoming this big thing. And Hulk Hogan goes on Johnny Carson. Johnny Carson tries, this is back when people still thought wrestling was real. And it was just starting to get to the point where maybe it's real, maybe it's not real. And Johnny Carson calls out Hulk Hogan. Like, well, isn't it predetermined? He's like, hold on a second. And the look that Hulk Hogan gives Johnny Carson when Johnny Carson calls it out being fake, like Johnny Carson always has those facial expressions. I legitly thought Johnny Carson was a little scared there for a moment. It's a fantastic interview. Actually, it was right after Hulk Hogan played Thunder Lips. because I know they talked about Thunderlips a little bit on there. Thunderlips, Rocky 3, anybody? No? Yes? Maybe? Yeah, anyway, it's a great moment right there. So check that out if you can, anybody. But yeah, hey, we're going to wrap the show up there. I am just going to shout out real quick, since I have watched a little bit of wrestling. Roman Reigns better win. I don't want to see Brock Lesnar win. Charlotte Flair better win. I don't want to see Ronda Rousey win. Seth Rollins, I want to see him beat Cody Rhodes, even if we know Cody Rhodes will win. Yeah. It's going to be an interesting WrestleMania. I will not be watching. I'll be reading the highlights. Maybe I'll find an illegal stream Sunday night. We'll see. But guys, trending in the AM. We're wrapping it up for another week here. Next week we'll be back. Jason, you got Sports and Metal tonight or tomorrow night?
Tonight.
What time is Sports and Metal tonight?
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock tonight, Sports and Metal. Make sure you check them out. And I'm sure you can link to all his accounts right from @Mustaine3651 as well. And we'll be back. Hold on, let me pull up my Twitter
Tomorrow
page.
I got Drunk on Everything with Don. We're
Tomorrow,
doing a little special pop-up episode, 10:30 in the morning.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. I apologize.
It's okay.
Drunk on Everything. Today, actually, on DSM, after this at 5 o'clock, you got Sports Raid with Scotty and Cole, and you got the Broad Street Bulls back at 9 p.m. with Jeremy. So make sure you're tapped into DSM Media, guys, and make sure you're following everybody. Let's not forget the time John Stossel called out wrestling to Dave Schultz. Yeah, I don't even remember that, honestly. I don't.
Fred is, if you want to, yeah, Fred's a wrestling guru.
Yeah, he might know a little too
He
much.
knows more about wrestling than anybody I know.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in today to Trending in the AM. Thanks for everybody for tuning in all week long. Greatly appreciate it. Everybody have a great day, a great weekend. Dude, Jason, what are we doing? Are we doing 6ers and 5? Are we?
You
Is there a
still
way
got to do it.
Can we do 6ers and 5?
Fuck the trend. How about
Yo,
66?
set the trends, baby. Aim higher, everybody, this weekend.